When joining a border crosswise with a up and down print, I like to take the time to actually match up the patterns. It's where my analness comes out. And it's fairly easy to do. What you want to do first is cut out your border. So we've cut an 8-inch border that the birds are at the, we're facing up to the top. And so I found something that was fairly dominant. So I looked at this little nest, and so I took and I pressed a little fold underneath for that nest. So that nest is now about a half a nest. So now I'm going to take the piece of fabric and I'm going to line up on the larger extra piece. And I'm going to keep lining up until I can actually make a whole nest, and my branch down here and my berries are looking very nice. So I just kind of shift and play until it's looking the way I would like. Once I have that done, I'll then raise up the fabric, holding on to the material so it's not going to shift on me, and I'll throw about 3 pins right in the crease that I originally pressed on the first piece of fabric. So we'll throw a few pins in there. And then I flip the fabric back and I do a little double check. If it looks nice pinned up, it's going to look nice when we sew it. And so that does. That looks great. Now what we need to do is we need to get the rest of the fabric cut. And I tend to do this after I have it pinned in case I need to shift up or down, say 1/4 of an inch. So I'm now going to take my rotary ruler and I'm going to lay my rotary ruler so the edge of the rotary ruler is lined up right along the edge of the border. I'm also going to extend the ruler so that the ruler is all the way to the edge of the fabric. I'll place my hand down on that, okay, and I'll cut right along that edge. And if you need to stop and shift your hand to keep the cut straight, that's fine. Just stop and do that. Now we're going to shift down to the bottom area, and so we're going to line up here along the edge of the border. Okay, but before I cut, I like to do a double check. This border here is 8 inches wide. So my ruler is 6 inches. I've got it lined up where I think it should be, but I'm going to lay a second ruler in to double check that I have 2 inches here and 6 inches here. 2 + 6 = 8. Now I'm sure that my edge is straight and I haven't made my border grow outward. I can then take and put my hand, walk my hand down the ruler, and cut my section there. Once you have this done, you're going to take this over to the sewing machine. And no longer are we worried about 1/4 inch seam allowances. What we want to do is we want to sew right down the crease that we originally pressed and pinned. So when you sew it, it's going to look like this. So here's our piece. I sewed down the crease, coming along here. Okay, I then opened it up to check it out. And that's exactly what I want, where I'm not really going to see the seam at all. I don't have any shifting. When I'm happy with that seam, I then am going to come back here and I'm going to trim away the excess fabric. And I usually trim away to either 1/4 of an inch or, up to maybe about 1/2 an inch. When we go to press this on the ironing board, we want to press this seam allowances open as opposed to pressing it to one side like we do a traditional seam. Our goal is to minimize that seam as much as we physically can. And one of the things that I find as we go over to the ironing board is if I cut my seam allowances to 1/4 of an inch, oftentimes it's hard for me to get them open and laying nice and flat. So if I go with a slightly larger seam allowance, your iron will press the edges over really easily. I then come over to the front of the fabric and give it a quick press. And I would be hard pressed if I didn't know there was a seam there to know there was a seam there.